to today's mental health webinar with our special guest. I'm so pleased to welcome Jocelyn Ramos Campbell. Jocelyn has done so many things. It's kind of mind-boggling. I mean, you can see, it is. You can see behind her, she has that lovely customized, backdrop that, talks about a few of the things that she's done. And um, so when we were thinking about doing a series on cultural competence and mental health ministry, Jocelyn's name came up immediately, and just in talking to her, she has so many great experiences, and her church is just doing so many things that are really instructive and helpful for others to learn from. So Jocelyn, I just am so delighted that you're here with us today. So thanks so much for taking your time out today.
Oh, well, I am honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is such an important topic, and I'm just honored to be here.
Well, thanks. Well, I always like to start our conversations with people just so that our guest has a little opportunity to share who they are and what their life experience is, because,
Yeah.
Our paths to ministry definitely are not all the same. And,
Right.
but one thing that tends to be pretty common is that our life experiences do, tend to draw us into ministry work. So just share with our audience a little bit about, who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jocelyn Campbell, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I always say we are a multicultural, multi-generational family. I have four boys, my husband and I, and we are all over this parenting spectrum. We have our oldest is in college. We have twin boys that are in junior high, and our youngest, who's 5, has autism. And my background in education wise is actually in law. And for 10 years, I worked as a public relations executive for the federal government in communications and marketing. And like most mothers, I understand once your kids start being born, you kind of want to be at home. And that's what really
Right.
started my career as a mompreneur, which I say
Right.
mom plus entrepreneur. And that's what started my doing of column work. I was a columnist. I started doing blogging. I was an on-air spokesperson. I was a columnist for Latina magazine, and that really doing the last 10 years of focusing on doing that. All the same time as being a mom, I was all my life I have been in ministry.
Mhm.
And when you're doing ministry, you do a little bit of everything. You really get trained to work in all areas
Right.
of ministry. So that's how I've been my whole entire life. But in the last 5 years is when I really have been dedicated to doing special needs ministry, disability ministry. I got trained in it for theology, studied it for theology and disability ministry, and that was underneath. I'm underneath my wonderful senior pastors, Dr. Tony McCoy and Jody McCoy, and that was what started our special needs ministry in our church, and I became an ordained pastor as well.
And just tell everybody the name of your church and where it's located.
Yes. So we are Hope International Church in Groveland, Florida, which is right outside of, I always say Mickey Mouse, because everybody's like, oh, wait, Mickey. So that is right outside of Orlando, Florida. And we have a wonderful campus there in Groveland. It's in Central Florida. And the campus there we have, it's very big. We have a school there. We are also right now in the process of building a gym and community center, which will also not only serve for the community and our special needs disability ministry, but it's also going to be helping for mental health because we are going to be having mental health counseling sessions there. And it's really going to be serving our community as a whole. So that's why we call it the community center as well.
Yeah, that is just fabulous. Well, and one thing that, I mean, you did mention that your church is very large, but one thing that's really interesting is that it is a racially, ethnically, culturally diverse church. When we
Yes.
were talking about this, you said that there's really kind of 3 different, cultural populations within your church, which I think is really fascinating, because that is not probably the typical experience still
Yes.
in American churches.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So, just tell us a little bit about how, how your church got started and, the path to being, the congregation that your church is today.
Yeah. Well, when Pastor Tony and Pastor Jody started this almost 18 years ago, they really felt a need. First of all, their whole entire motto is save, encourage, and change.
Hmm.
Saving souls, encouraging hearts, and changing your surrounding communities. So
Hmm.
that's how they started with that vision, and they are really community based. They wanted to reach out into the communities. They wanted to serve the communities. They wanted to get hands on
Right.
with the community. So to doing that, that's all through actions. So when you think about that, you really got to go where the people are.
Right.
You've got to be able to serve them right where their needs are. So from the beginning, they had a vision of we need a school in this area. And at the time, there was no Christian school in the area
Hmm.
that was serving that community. You
Right.
know, that's the reason they're doing the gymnasium, the community center. There is no gym right now in the area, that's serving that area. There's no recreational center or anything like that.
Hmm.
So it started becoming a place where people could come to that they can know that they can get resources from this area. They started doing food drops, like food pantries. They
Right.
started partnering with other churches. From the very beginning, they had a thing like if it wasn't there at their church, it's okay. They're going to partner with another church and they're going to join forces together to make sure that the needs of the community were being met. So
Right.
that's how, they also joined forces and said, this is not about us and, oh, okay, this is only our church and we can only do this. No, if it's going to serve the greater good of the church, then hey, we're all going to join together and bring, pull those resources together to serve the community and give them what they need. So
Right.
that's how people started also coming and realizing, hey, this is, this church is serving us. Hey, this church is, word of
Right.
mouth. Like everybody's starting, realizing like not only are they're getting great gospel messages, not only are they getting a good children's church, not only are they getting, a good school, but they're also realizing they're coming here and they're finding the resources that they need, or they're getting in connection. Like, oh, we might not do this, but hey, we're going to connect you with someone that does. So
Right.
that's how it kind of also grew in that way as well.
Hmm. Well, and I mean, gosh, that is just like the biblical model right there. I mean,
Yes.
I just love that. And,
Yeah.
and obviously God has blessed it, for you guys
hmm
to have only been a church for 18 years and,
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be a large church now in your area.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
several months ago, you wrote a couple of blog posts for us on the Key Ministry Church for Every Child blog, talking about the importance of cultural competence and working with or ministering to multicultural families. And
hmm
one of the many great points that you shared in those posts that I thought was just so insightful is that different cultures view health in different ways.
hmm
And and that ultimately, a person's perspective and a ministry perspective has to understand where a person's coming from.
Yes.
So speak a little bit to how your church has been able to work with the diverse cultural groups that you have in your church and community, knowing that there are different views on what health actually is.
hmm Well, I think one of the things is that it starts from the top. I think it has to start from the top of your leadership. The way you communicate with others, it has to be shown from the pulpit.
Right.
So in our church, we were taught that you show love through actions, and it has to show it from the top and it trickles down all the way to your leadership, to your volunteers. So for us, Pastor Tony and Pastor Jody show love through actions. Everybody is welcomed in our church, and that is because they show it in action every day.
Right.
There is no like, oh, are you Hispanic? Oh, are you this? Well, then listen, you need to come back later for no, no, no. There's none of that. You come in and everybody's embraced fully.
Right.
And I think that was part of one of the things about having that cultural competency. Like one of the things that we're doing now is, we have obviously Hispanics that are coming to our church, and there's Hispanics that don't speak English. And I think a
Right.
lot of churches understand that, they might have an African-American pastor. They might have an American Caucasian pastor. And we hear that often, like, how do I reach the Hispanic Americans that I know that do not, I want to talk to them, but I don't speak the language. One of the things that we're doing is taking just basic Spanish terminology, like buenos dias,
Right.
gloria a Dios, glory to God, Dios
Right.
te bendiga, God bless you, basic things, and everybody's learning it. And I'm talking about volunteers, the people that open the doors, the greeters. ¿Dónde está el baño? Where's the bathroom?
Right.
Just
That's an important one.
That's an important one. just basic Spanish terminology, so that when they come in the door, they feel like, oh, like they can even speak my language. It's not that you're going to become entirely fluent, but it's
Right.
just that intentional connection that you're trying to say, I'm trying to connect with you, and to know that they feel welcome there.
Right.
That's something that I think was really important to, for us to know, that when people come through the door, they feel that we are giving them empathy. We want to understand them. We want to be intentional with you. We want to have compassion with you, and that it starts from the top, that it's not just one or two people, maybe just the Spanish ministry. It's the whole entire church.
Right.
We all are trying to make an effort to make you feel welcome.
All right, it looks like possibly Catherine has lost her internet here. So hi, Jocelyn, it's Beth.
Hi, Beth.
I want to ask you another question about what you
Sure.
just mentioned about that teaching people to be welcoming from the top down. Tell me a little bit about, like, your greeters and your ushers and other members of your staff. Are they also learning, like the most common Spanish phrases and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So we actually bought, how they have when your kids are going to school and college, and they have those Spanish like the flashcards that are laminated, and they say hola, ¿cómo estás? And stuff. We actually bought those, for everybody, for like our teams, for the volunteers, for our leadership to have that. And it was important because we want everyone to feel welcomed when they come into our church. And you might think like, well, everybody's not going to be like totally fluent. It's not that it's for everyone to feel fluent. It's just that when someone comes in the door that you see is obviously doesn't speak English, they're already hesitant, they don't know what's going on. When they come in, you just want to say something like, hola, buenos dias, hello, good morning, something so simple, but it means a lot when you have that cultural and language barrier already there. Se puede sentar, aquí, which means, you can sit right here. It's just the little tiny things, but for someone who already has that language impairment, there's that barrier already there. It just opens up everything to them. It makes them feel welcomed. It makes them feel like there is someone here in a church who's trying to communicate with me. They're trying to make me feel welcome. And, you can imagine already, we all been through this situation already. When you go your first time visitor to a church, you're already speaking the same language as English. And we already know how uncomfortable it is when you're going the first time to a church. So then on top of that, you're adding a language impairment. Like, you're like, it's already uncomfortable already, so it's to kind of just break down those walls and feeling that, we understand you, we have that empathy, and we're making an intention to connect with you.
Awesome, thank you. So just to fill Catherine in really quickly, we just kind of continue with the conversation about some of the things you can do. It's very important that it's from the top, starts at the top.
Yes.
Really empowering every layer of staff and everybody in the congregation to learn some of these things to make it a more welcoming environment.
Yes.
Right.
I'll let you guys take it from here.
Okay, thank you. And so since we had a little interruption,
right, Beth just went right through it. She's good.
And I'm just going to say right now, I use Comcast, and they are terrible because this happens on a regular basis.
I remember that when I lived in Virginia, so I understand.
So, but back to my train of thought. So if you've got questions, if you've got comments, please put them in the chat here on the webinar or on the Facebook Live, because we are monitoring both. So, so I was so blown away by what your church is doing around mental health ministry. Like all of these things that we've been talking about so far, there can be so much hesitation, and you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to do the wrong thing. You just want people to like get to know each other and have friendships. And so mental health is one of those things that people just don't want to touch. I mean, even in church, and your church is taking this head on. And I just think that that is so refreshing and encouraging that, even with the cultural differences that are present in your community and in your church is really being intentional. So if you could just share some of the many things, just maybe the top 3 or 4 that you guys are doing on a regular basis to address mental health needs, the reality that people live with, and then we'll talk about some of those from there.
Sure. So, like I said, everything comes from the pulpits, because when you got it from the leadership, everything else follows. So from the pulpit, the stigma of mental health in our church is being removed. People feel that in churches, they make them feel that if they're seeing a counselor or they're taking some therapeutic medicine, that they're doing something wrong, or maybe they don't have enough faith and that's why they're sick or whatever. So we're really trying to make an effort to remove all of that, because if you're seeing counseling or you're seeing a therapist, that's the way you're supposed to be going, and it's okay. So on staff at our church, our senior pastor, Pastor Tony, is a licensed counselor. So, and then our associate pastor, Dr. Rick Adams, is a licensed psychotherapist, and he's a family mediator, mental health counselor. So Dr. Adams and Pastor Tony have been host a regular Facebook Live series on mental health. So they are tackling issues where they discuss like the impact of mental health issues, like on the pandemic. That has been obviously a big topic right now, but facing adults, facing parents, children, special needs families. They offer biblical wisdom, like a perspective. And then they also offer like community resources and guidance and like where to find services, in the area. So that's one area that they've been doing as well. Another one is our associate pastors, Pastor Rita and Winston Simon. They're marriage counselors, but they also counsel in specializing areas, because things like even training and development, because, if you have mental health issues, but then, you're also trying to, get a job, or trying to, also balance that with the mental health issue. They offer resource in that in counseling. Then we also have like a regular, we call our talk show Hope Talk, because we do it at the church and we go on Facebook Live, and we interview and feature community resources. So we have like local law enforcement come in, because there's a stigmatized also with local law enforcement, even nationwide with law enforcement. And then the community citizens, like you don't, right away, there's like a negativity, especially what's happened this past year. There's a negativity about when you call the cops and someone's having a mental health crisis. There's been that whole issue of that, like how they respond to it and what's going on with that. So there's definitely a big chasm between that. So we're trying to also to kind of connect the law enforcement and that to educate our community, and also educate law enforcement on what to do when a mental health crisis occurs. And so that also our community members know who your local law enforcement is. A lot of them are Christian, and that has been like eye-opening to a lot of the community members. And so it's kind of created this connection where the local law enforcement actually refer people to the church, for support and services, and vice versa. So that has been like a very nice symbiotic, mutual beneficial relationship. And then we also highlight for during the talk show as well, people that have overcome and are continuing to fight mental issues with drug addiction, alcohol abuse, even internet addiction, and so that has been a new one. And it's been something that we talk about even with like cybersecurity and with children, young adults and teens. So, we're trying to highlight some of those issues that are often not talked about in churches, or you might see it on a TV special or documentary, but that are really affecting everyday Christian families, and that don't get talked about until often it's now become a problem when it's too late, unfortunately. So we're trying to, put that focus now. Hope has been doing that, and Pastor Tony, Pastor Jody, they've been really working on highlighting those things and how we can work ways that we can come up with solutions and offer those services. Because oftentimes what we find out is that people just don't know. They don't know what's
Right.
out there. They don't
Right.
know what's available to them. They didn't know that there's a counselor up the street, or that there's, local government services that even are for free that they could have, used, and they just don't know,
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah. Well, so I'm really curious. So the participation in some of these things, like the Facebook group,
The Facebook Live.
the Facebook Live. Yeah. So, what is the participation? I mean, do you create things that are tailored specific to the Hispanic community, for example, or, is it just more general as, your pastoral team is seeking ways to help people, really understand the realities about mental health needs and that everybody, it's not a shameful thing. It's something that anybody can be experiencing.
Yeah, so we do it. I kind of would say both ways. We do it generalized so that it could go on Facebook Live and it gets shared and things like that. And
Mhm.
then we have also we do have our Hispanic ministry with Pastor George and Wanda, and then they also talk about mental health. They also they're in charge of, like, Pastor George has been wonderful with doing our food drive, and then he's also giving, like, in our food drive, we also give with the box of food, like, and like, here's some pamphlets about resources and things, and we're giving it to them as we're giving them the free food. We're doing
Yes.
that as well and talking to them. So it has really become a kind of like a way of just, they come to him now, says, like, just even in the car, they'll ask him questions. And as he's giving them free food, and he's like, hold on, like, I'll get a pamphlet for you. Call
Right.
me, here's my cell phone. And it's become like a very open dialogue now, which is what we wanted, where
Yes.
people could just be like,
Yes.
stopping him in Publix and just ask him something. And that's
Right.
what we wanted, like an open dialogue and conversation where they feel like they can just approach us and they know, like, somebody's going to
Right.
get you the information you need. You can stop any of us,
Yes.
And that's what we wanted, we wanted that communication with the community.
Yeah, I was really curious about whether or not you were tailing any of your communications or your programming.
Oh yeah, and things in Spanish, and things or materials are available in Spanish, because that has been now an important aspect now as our Hispanic population as well, because a lot of it was just people like like myself that were bilingual, so we could read it in Spanish or English, but we're seeing now a very large growth of non-English speakers. So
Mhm.
now we are now printing up materials that are in Spanish, and Pastor George and Wanda have done a wonderful job of doing Facebook Live videos, of doing recordings that are in just Spanish. And
Mhm.
it's and that's why it's important to have printed material and audios and recording, just materials in Spanish, because you can never assume that, oh, it's just only for the older generation. There's a lot of younger generation of
Right.
Hispanics that are coming here to the country, that are with young children, and they do not speak English. So it's not just the older generation. So you also,
Right.
you also have to customize it for those who are raising families and really do not speak English. So it's important to have
Right.
those materials as well in Spanish language.
Right. Yeah. That's a beautiful example of just
Yeah.
removing a barrier,
Yes, removing all
it is a
barriers. You want to
barrier.
have you want to have all the resources you can, and the languages, and that's what's important, that you know
Right.
your community. You
Right.
have to know your community, because then you know how to have the resource that you need available so that you can connect with your community. But you got to know who your community is first.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, so a little different take on basically that same question. So
Mhm.
in one of those blog posts you wrote for us, you talked about how Hispanic communities, if a child has a disability, the whole family basically takes ownership of the child's
Mhm.
disability. That's just
Yes.
the nature of
Mhm.
the Hispanic culture. Whereas if you're from another ethnic minority, for example, like we talked several months ago with DJ Chuang, who is an
Yes.
Asian American gentleman. He was a pastor. He lives with bipolar disorder, and he talked extensively about the shame culture that is part of many Asian Americans experience still. I mean, even living as Americans. And so I'm curious, is there anything that you guys are doing that that helps address maybe those kinds of cultural differences that maybe you see, from even at the socioeconomic level, because I think, it's sometimes, there's a lot of attention focused on race in this country, but a lot of times and I'm only speaking from my own experience, but socioeconomic differences can be more of a barrier in some ways than the ethnic barriers are. So, is there any other tailoring that you're doing of your resources, or, have you thought about that?
Definitely. I think one is being in the community. And when I say being in the community, is being where your community is. So if there's a school function, things that happen, oftentimes there's community fairs. There's things that are put upon for the government, for low income families, and your ministry should be there. You should have a table there. If there's a health fair, if there's things that, for example, like Head Start, Head Start is nationwide, they often have, family fun day, or things like that for the Head Start, participants or the children. Your ministry, your church should have a booth there. You should be like where the community is, especially if you know that it's being tailored or targeted for a specific nationality, a specific socioeconomic status. Like, your ministry should be there. That's why I always say, like, if there's a way that your church can be represented in the community, then be there. And a lot of times you find out because you need to have a connection in the school. You need to have a connection at even maybe a chamber of commerce in your area if it's active. You need to have a representative even in your local city council. Go to the city council meetings, find out what's going on. It's just extremely important for your church to be connected with your community, so that they see that your church is there for the community. And it's not about all the time to be like, I think people think that when they see the church oftentimes, and I've heard that like even at chamber of commerce meetings, like, oh, well, they're here, but all they're trying to do is like, yes, you're here to represent Jesus, but you also want to know, like, I'm here to serve. Jesus was here to serve, that was his number one thing, and he saw the needs first. He saw when people were hungry, said, we got to feed this crowd. Like, he saw that, he saw the physical need as well as the spiritual need. So when you're going to these places, you are identifying like, hey, we're here to help. And if you see there's a need of hunger, hey, how can we help? Do you need food? We've got a food bank. You need to also see the physical side. There's a mental health issue here. Hey, let me put you in touch with some counselors, That's what the church is also here to do, is to serve the entire community, the entire person, the entire family, all their areas, So I think that's so important. And I think also connecting with community-based organizations, if you are, a Caucasian pastor and you do have, a segment of your population and your congregation that is Hispanic American, that is African American, contact your civic, organizations in your community. Contact, community-based organizations that are for Hispanic Americans, that are for African Americans. Contact your local fire departments, contact your law enforcement. Oftentimes, they already are connected with those civic-minded organizations that they can put you in touch with them. And they said, hey, yeah, we can have somebody come to your church and speak, to your congregation. We can have a African American mental health counselor come to your church, or Hispanic American person or Hispanic person come to your church. You can create those connections and not have to feel like I have to do this all on my own as a church or as a pastor. You can create, those bridge and those relationships so that the entire community could come together and you're forming that connection and that mutually beneficial relationships.
Well, and I mean, this is so much what key ministry is about, is that connectedness and collaboration. In fact, our 3 focus words for this year are connectedness, collaboration, and discipleship. And we just think that, I mean, you really can't have one without the other. I'm really curious, what the change has been kind of in the conversations within your church, because you are so open about mental health issues? You know, have you noticed a change? You know, are people like in small group ministry or you know, your Sunday school programming or whatever your programming is, have you noticed an I guess an increased openness from the people who are there to be willing to talk about and share their mental health experiences and maybe resources that they have to help others?
I definitely think the perception of the community is that hope is providing hope, you know, in a way. Yeah, I definitely think so. It's very much an open door policy. You can just tell by people that come to the front door, and I'm not even talking about on a Sunday, you know, because they do have Hope Academy there, the school, and you can just tell when people come to the front door, it's either like through word of mouth through a neighbor, you know,
Right.
or from Buddy Break, you know, our respite care, or through the school, or through Facebook, or watching a sermon. The people that come in, they're different cultures, they're different ages. Sometimes they're even from different religious backgrounds. So that's,
Right.
you know, already that they're like, you know, there's different people that are coming in. And they know when they're coming in that they're not going to leave empty handed. There's just already a perception, you know, when you see them coming in, it's like, I know when I'm coming in, like I was told that I can find help, you know, like I was
Right.
told that I can
Right.
get a resource. I was told that I'm going to get a name, you know, it's already, they're coming in with that expectation that they're coming here and they're going to get something, you know, that they're looking for. And so I think that has been so wonderful to see that there's already that perception established in the community. And that, you know, from Pastor Tony, from Pastor Jody, 18 years of just working,
Right.
working in that community, working, you know, teaching all of us to be, you know, when you are working in the community, you know, they always tell us, you know, don't matter what, it's not like you're ever off. You're in the
Right.
field, you're at Publix, you're on, you are working, you know, you're
Right.
working and laboring in the field. So if somebody, I mean, I've had people come up to me like, hey, you know, do you go to that church? Are you a pastor from that church? Can I ask you? I mean, I've had literally that conversation, and I'm like with my kids, and you know,
Right.
I'm like pushing a cart, and I'm like, okay, yeah, let me give you my business card from the church here. You can call them. I'll connect you. You know, and that happens. You're never, you know, but that is what we are taught. Like they know that if they see somebody from Hope, they're going to get information. You know, they're gonna get, and I think that's so wonderful because they know that there's an expectation that they know they're gonna get the information, and the most important, they're not gonna get judgment.
Yeah.
And if they're coming to us, they're not going to get any judgment. There's no, preconceived bias. You know that the church has this relationship that we're going to give you the information, or we're going to connect you with the resources and support, and we're going to find somehow whatever it is that you're looking for. We're going to connect you with that. And I think that's so important for a church to have, for any community center, any resource, to find the resource that people are looking for.
Yeah, what a fabulous reputation to have in your community. And you talk about how, you know, it's been 18 years in the making. I mean, that's not something that happens overnight for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, that's fabulous. I mean, you're operating a little bit like no pun intended, like a doctor, you know, who, you know, gets, you know, hit up for advice on every ache and pain. You know, they can't go to the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
So just throwing this out there, if you've got a question, a comment, please post in the Facebook Live, post in the chat on the webinar, and we'll get those worked into the conversation with Joscelyn with the time that we have remaining. So, you know, if you could sum up just what you think of, you know, just your opinion, one or two really important things that churches with diverse populations or diverse communities need to do to gain that cultural competence, what would those be? I mean, and you've already talked around this, but, you know, if you had to really zero in, like if you were talking with a church from Missouri today, you know, who is watching this webinar and boy, they want to be, you know, following the model that Hope has laid out, you know, what are a couple of things that you would tell them, you know, are good places to start?
I would say first, be welcoming with an open heart. You know, you really want to be open listening,
Yes.
get rid of any preconceived ideas, listen with compassion. That's all number one. Welcoming, have an open heart, and listening with compassion. That's all number one. Number two, remember that you don't have to do this all alone. You are part of a community, link up with your community resources, civic organizations, your local law enforcement, create an alliance. You can create a diversity equity team, which is, an equity team plans and organizes like inclusive events and, and you can have, people like an African American speaker and Hispanic American speaker come and talk to your congregation. That's part of doing this together, create an alliance together. And three, just be intentional about it. Don't stop, like do one thing and say, okay, we did it. We did one fair and we're good now. This is a continuous model. This is a plan. This should not be a one-time thing. You're going to continue to do this. This should be part of your ministry.
Right.
This is something that you continue to do year after year. And, this is something that is part of your ministry plan.
Well, one thing that you told me when we talked about this webinar was that your community, or the local government, came to you guys and asked you to consider building the community center because they recognized what a huge impact you're making in the community, and that would be an asset not only for you guys but excuse me, the community at large. So talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yes. So the community center that we have, the gymnasium and the community center, that was something that the local, because of the work that, Hope has been doing, it has been, they have recognized that Hope is, working for the community, and that mutually beneficial relationship with the city of Groveland. They asked, Hope has, land, and they said, we want to partner, with you. We need a community center here. We need a place where kids can go and play after school, and for not only, for the law enforcement, to have, their athletic leagues and the sports and all of that, but also a place where mental health counseling sessions can happen. And so they wanted that, and they asked Hope, would you consider on your land building, a gym? So, Hope, and that was something that they thought about and, prayed about. And, we are in the midst of that now. And we are fundraising for it. And we are very close to it. And we are, fundraising. We are asking, we have Hope Campus 500 partners who are helping us, building the fundraising. And, we are on our way with that. And because this is really, when I say community, I mean, we're building, this is not just, people think gym and they think, okay, a gym. It's not just a gym. It's like a kitchen, because we're going to be serving, food to those who need it. It's going to have classrooms, it's going to have bathrooms, it's going, it's just, it's for the community. Our special needs kids will be having classes, Sunday schools there. They're thinking also of having like respite care, like overnights there for, for respite care for our children. I mean, when you think of all that's going to be done there, it really is a community center. So, we are, if anyone, wants to, you can go to our website, gohopechurch.com. If you would like to give, we would absolutely love that. Because, this is really giving back. This is a legacy, this is really giving back to the community. This will be here long after, and it's for the community and for those that not just here now, but for those later on. This is, we are doing something that is needed, and is something that is going to continue to live on for children and future generations. And when we see this, when I saw that, I was like, wow, the community came and asked the church to do this because they knew there was a need. But this goes beyond that as well. I see this, when you think about the people that are going to be affected by this, people that are afraid right now to go into like even just a doctor's office because they don't have insurance, because of that, there's going to be free mental health classes and awareness and counseling for free in there, So this is affecting, just more than just the people that live here, because people from other areas are going to come there. So, it's something that is, we are just praying, continue to pray on, and we ask for your prayers as well as we're continuing to build that. And and you're supportive.
Well, and you know, and to sum up some of what you just talked about, you know, we have put forth for the last few years that if you can really address someone's pain points or meet, you know, a tangible need in your community, that those two things are just as much mental health ministry as anything else that you do. Because you know, if you can eliminate some of the stressors of daily life,
Yes.
you know, that can cause tremendous anxiety, or you know, allow a person to just sink into depression because they're dealing with what, you know, what seems to be in a situation that they can't overcome on their own. You know, if you can just, you know, provide the way forward in, you know, in just difficulties of daily living. And I'll just throw out an example. If you, you know, if you are a single parent and you're working and you don't have any childcare, well, if your church is willing and, you know, has the facility to provide before and after care, oh my goodness, I mean, what a blessing that is.
That changes the dynamics of
yes
everything.
yes and from that aspect, it doesn't matter, you know, where you're coming from, you know, as a culture or a socioeconomic status, you know, those are needs that every human has. You know, it's whether it's, you know, getting to a job or you know, making sure that their child is safe before and after school. So you know, so we just really commend all that you guys are doing. I mean, it's really you know, right up our alley, shall we say.
Yes.
So,
We're just have, you know, producing jobs. You know, that's one thing that we're looking at the gym, and I was like, the jobs that this is going to produce, you know,
oh
as
yeah,
well, you know,
and that too, right.
you know, that's just, it's something, you know, because people think gym, they think basketball. I'm like, this is jobs. I was like, this is going to help people to get jobs. So yeah.
Well, and we've been connected to different organizations over the last few years that are doing just really incredibly creative things. Like, you know, if you do have a you know, a large cultural or ethnic population, you know, and you want to increase the awareness of mental health needs and normalize the conversation around mental health needs, you know, create programs that they're interested in, you know, have, there's a foundation in Texas that provides grants to churches so that they can host things like you know, basketball events for African American boys, and but they talk about, you know, mental health related topics within the basketball event. So I mean, just a little creativity goes such a long way. To, you know, it's like Paul talked about in the New Testament. It's not changing the message, but it's understanding where people are and where they're coming from.
Where they are, meeting their needs, right where they're coming from.
Exactly. So, well, we've only got about 10 more minutes, but I want you to share a little bit about your senior pastor, because I think it's such a cool story. He got from previous life to pastor of this church. So share about him, if you will.
One of my favorite topics. And he knows that I love talking about him. So senior pastor, Dr. Tony McCoy, was actually his previous life. He's actually a Florida Gator, you know, the Gators. And yeah, I know you like that. He's actually a Florida Gator. Yep. And he also is a retired NFL player. He played for many years for the Indianapolis Colts. And then he also played for the Arizona Cardinals. So he is a professional NFL player. And I think a lot of people find that when they hear, first of all, a lot of people know him as either a Gator, especially here in Florida. You know, when people know him Gator, they go crazy when they see him. And of course, in Gainesville, you know, there's like walls like named after him, trophies, like, you know, he's, you know, they know him, you know, and so that's where he graduated from and everything before he got drafted. Of course, you know, he's an NFL player, and so, you know, in Indianapolis Colts and Cardinals, so, you know, there's all of that, you know, so when you look up his name, all that comes up. So it is so interesting because people know him. We know him, of course, you know, I know, of course, a lot of people that he's an NFL player, but there's people that know him solely as that. So I've seen like people come and they're like, it's Tony McCoy, the NFL player, and they go crazy because it's that.
Right.
Or then there's people that know him like, oh, it's Pastor Tony, and they go crazy because of that.
Right.
So it's so
Right.
it's so funny to see it. But he has always had a heart. When he tells the stories, his mother Mary, as we call her, we love her so much. She's a wonderful woman of the Lord, and she's in charge of our chaplain care team here at the church. She will tell you, and even through the stories that he tells, he's always been like, just had a heart for the Lord, from young, and when he was, in the NFL, like he was like little Pastor Tony, even in the NFL,
Right.
And he, studied the word. He used to do Bible studies, when he was in the NFL with the team players, and like he had the calling already even then,
Right.
So this was not like, 'cause some people think like, well, how in the world did he go from, the NFL to, to preaching and stuff? But it wasn't like he just decided after he retired, like, oh, let me see what the Lord's about,
Right.
He was already called. He had that calling on his life from young. And he followed it through, even through the years in the NFL. He followed that. And he followed the calling that was already in his life. He was acting upon it. He had mentors when he was in the NFL that were nurturing his spirit and nurturing him to be a pastor. And he was already doing those Bible studies, and he was following that all through the NFL. And he will tell you stories about how God, was walking him through the games and then walking him through, as his season of his life, as just as he was growing in the word and in the ministry. So it was just a natural progression for him to go and to be a pastor. And, and he was under a pastor, after he got under the NFL. And, and he did his associate pastor, and, he graduated, he was ordained as a minister. He did all the work that he was supposed to do until the Lord told him it was time for him to open up his own church. Right. And that's when, he opened up Hope International. So, I mean, it was just amazing to see how God will use, one of the things I talk about is that God will use all of your background. God will use all of your pain, suffering, glories, all your achievements, and will turn it into your ministry, your purpose, So he'll use all of your background. So he used all of Pastor Tony's background, even all the glory of the NFL and all of that. He's used that. I mean, there's really people that have come in, and that has been like the attraction, like that has been the attraction because, oh, it's a NFL superstar, and stuff. But then what's made them stay is the Lord, is Pastor Tony's preaching. And that might have been what got him in the door and got him to sit down in the seat. But it was God who made them, stay, and, and they've got connected into the church. So God's going to use everything, God's going to use everything about a person, for his glory. So they are, I mean, truly, the two of them. Pastor Jody is just the spiritual mom of the church. She is, I can't even say, so she's absolutely wonderful. When I tell you that woman has just the spirit of discernment on her. I mean, she is like, that is like Mama Bear, she is just, they are two of the most wonderful people I have truly ever met. I've been in church all my life, but these are people that are givers. They walk, the way you see them outside in church is exactly who they are inside in their house. They are givers, they give in the community. And I think that is a big reason why God has blessed them the way they have, and why people respond to them the way they do. So it is a blessing to be under their leadership and in their church.
Well,
Comcast. Comcast.
Yeah, love it. That was a really fun story, and I wish I hope to meet them someday.
Oh yeah, well, you might. I think I'm allowed to say it now, but they did say they want to be a host site for. Excellent. All right, well, we're pretty much at the top of the hour. It's okay.
So this has been so much fun, and I've learned so much about your church and what you're doing to serve the community that you're in. I love hearing about the collaboration within the community. As you know, that's really important to us here too. So thank you. Thank you for the incredible blog posts that you've shared on keyministry.org. I encourage people to jump online and check those out. And yes, you'll be hearing more from Joscelyn coming up. So we'll keep you posted on that. So
I just want to say the website of the church. Is that okay?
yes,
And
please,
give
please
yes.
do. Please do.
So if anybody would like to come, and even you're interested in what we're doing with the gym, you go to gohopechurch.com. Also wanted to share just some of the resources. They said we just to share the websites. If anybody's interested in Dr. Adams' website, it's mindwayinternational.com. We also have the website of Pastors Winston and Rita. You can find them on facebook.com, Inspired to Grow. And of course, mine is JocelynRamosCampbell.com. And our church is gohopechurch.com.
Okay, so we will put all of those links.
Yes, yes. Well, I will put them all. Yeah, I'll send them to you guys.
Yeah. So we will be posting this interview or this webinar on keyministry.org on our mental health webinars page, and you can click there or go to our YouTube or Vimeo channels, either one, and we will have all of those resources included when we get this posted. So look for that in the next day or so. But right. Joscelyn, thank you so much for your time today and for all the information you shared.
Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye, guys.